Thank y'all so much for having me here and for the opportunity to talk what's happening in India and what the Lord is doing through His people. That's one of the pictures that I was showing. There was with the widows and orphans thing. You can see we couldn't fit the two pictures, the whole crowd in one picture, so I had to cut into and do that. And this was from earlier this year. 13,500 individuals who are orphans and widows. And 200 of them were special needs individuals that were helped during that time. So I was talking a little bit about the work in India. We started off with talking about the widows and orphans effort. That is one of the major efforts that goes on. You talk about what we do is we give them food, we give them clothing, we give them medicine. So it just money is one aspect of it, but then the coordination, you can see, as I said, coordinating all those things. 302 villages represented, 175 large vehicles that were used to transport these individuals, 320 and 40 buses are used. So there's a lot of coordination. All that to say, I'm not the only one who doesn't work. As a matter of fact, I kind of oversee, but there are individuals who are, putting those names together. We have to put all our names together. So when we call this 13,000, we used to call their names and give them. And we're like, okay, this is taking too many days to do, because we used to call them. And because, there will be people who would come, somebody will hear, hey, somebody's giving this clothing for some orphans and widows, or there might be poor individuals who might say, hey, maybe they'll give us too. They'll just come and show up. So, 13,500, but then there were like a couple thousand individuals who were not registered that day. They just showed up. So we say, okay, we'll take your names and we'll come to you, or we'll let you know when we can do the next time. But again, there's a lot of individuals who are participating in this effort, and they're putting their lives out there, doing a lot to make a difference in our communities there. So this is again nutritional kids for the leprosy and individuals. So this is the summer camp that we have. This was the last year picture, so we had about 500 last year. So this is actually from this morning in India. So they had already worshipped. Those last night here, Central Time would be 11 o'clock Central. So that's our new building. We couldn't fit our small church building, so even in our small church building, if we sit shoulder to shoulder, we can fit maybe 200 people in the building, and every Sunday, typically there are about 120 individuals sitting outside watching a TV that is live streamed from inside. So we are like, okay, if we're going to have more kids, there were like 600 kids, and their families were invited for the worship and meal and this whole closing ceremony for the campers. So then we had to use the new building. So that was the first time a major event that took place. So that building is pretty full with all the kids and our church members. And that's the camp. Individuals outside that building. Bridge to Hope is a building for orphans and widows. So Camp Sun this is what it is. And then we also do backpack distribution for individuals. Another aspect of our work is Christian Academy, where we educate mostly orphans and street kids and other underprivileged children in the communities. We have 3 locations and about 700 kids that are going through that program. They not only learn regular education, but also about God. Again, just want to reiterate what we do. And ultimately, what we hope to accomplish is that making disciples of all people is what we hope to accomplish. Another aspect of our work is free medical clinic. The bottom floor is the worship area that I was talking about. We have worship space and some office area there too, but the rest of the building is all clinics. So that's the inside the clinic. We have a dental clinic. My youngest brother is married to a dentist, and she is with us full-time helping with this. We can do any kind of dental procedure right there at the church building. I can go preach in the downstairs and go upstairs and do a surgery. And that's the operating room at the church building. it's a pretty unique situation to have an operating room in the church building. But then we have this ophthalmology clinic. This is one of the newest additions to our work, where we can do basic vision testing to major surgeries like cataract and other stuff too. Again, our ultimate goal is, again, not just providing individuals with free medical care. Our ultimate goal is to have the opportunity to introduce them to the great physician, because that's what we want to accomplish through all of this. And because of that, we don't do medical missions as a typical medical missions. Y'all might be familiar with where the medical missions are like, okay, here's the registration, you get registered, and I ask for, hey, you want to study Bible? Yes or no? If yes, go study Bible and go see a doctor. Well, we don't have the Bible study component right there. Well, understanding the patients, they're there because they're not feeling well. They're not there because they're feeling well enough to engage their mental faculties to study Bible. So it's like, it's going to be counterproductive to what we are hoping to accomplish. So we said we're not doing Bible study then, but what we do is we do everything else, and we take their information, we run the tests and all of that, and once the test reports come back, our preaching students will go to their home and deliver those reports and have an opportunity to interact and build a longer-term relationship in that process, which has been proved to be pretty profitable. We do medical relief as well as a part of that. Another one is our TV programs, 30 minutes per day. We are using 3 different satellites as part of this, and that's one satellite picture, or actually, at least that's what they claim to have their footage in terms of extended free outreach for them. So my dad is also part of the program, and we have a few others. Again, this is one of the vital programs in our outreach, because, as I mentioned earlier, India is 84% Hindu and 14% Muslim. So those who claim to be Christian are about less than 2%, because there are other religions too. Sikhism, those folks with turbans, we have those. We have Zoroastrians, this is a Persian religion. We have Jains, we have Buddhists, and there's just a mixture of smaller groups too. But the majority of them are Hindu and Muslim. And especially, as Dr. Ward mentioned about the persecution, it is almost all the time it is dangerous to go knock doors and go interact with them, at least in the first of the few interactions. To have that in a personal level at their homes is going to be very counterproductive, because it's going to be dangerous to not only to the individual who is going to the homes, but also to the families who are receiving them. As I said, the persecution is going to be a serious situation. And because of that, our individuals, our graduates, our current students, our family members who are from these religious backgrounds, they take the initiative and make the first step and kind of introduce them to some of the softer side of the resources where they can do it on their own without the fear of persecution. So once they are at a point where they are ready to take a next step, and they already have connections with their family members who are already Christian, we'll help them move forward with that. Another one is our Bible project. We print Bibles, and this is Old and New Testaments, but also has 100-page study material that go with this. Our goal is to give a Christian, every time somebody is immersed, we want to give them a new Bible with the study material to help them with their walk as a new Christian. Another one is our clean water projects. Clean water projects, there are 2 different levels of issues with the water. One is groundwater pollution. Groundwater pollution with heavy doses of fluoride. When I say heavy doses of fluoride, we're talking about 40 times more than normal levels of fluoride. And that's pretty much drinking poisonous water. And then in some cases, there are situations, there's arsenic and uranium in the water. They're not high to heavy doses, even basic traces are going to completely mess up. So when individuals, pregnant women, young kids drink water. Babies are born with birth defects, and all these issues, and the later health issues are going to be the issue. So these two guys in the top and the left-hand side, they are still alive and in their 40s. They cannot walk, they cannot do anything. They can talk, but they just cannot do anything physically except for some help from somebody else. The guy with his mother, he was 17 when the picture was taken, but he passed away when he was 20 years old. That's a groundwater issue. This is the red state. Andhra Pradesh is where we are. You can see that red state is 70 to 100% fluoride. That does not even talk about arsenic and uranium and other heavy metals in the water. But then you have surface water issue. I mean, this picture is, I say this is comically tragic, because you look at this and say, wow, this is never seen in the U.S. It's laughable because there's so much going on there. But at the same time, it is tragic. I mean, you can see on the very top, let me see if I can point mine. Yeah. There's a guy taking a bath here. He's sitting on the, you can see from right there at maybe 1 o'clock area. And that's, he's taking a bath there. Right down back to 9 o'clock is a black, dark animal. That's a water buffalo. That guy is giving his water buffalo a bath. And then right here at 6 o'clock, you see there's a little rock and some clothing on it. Somebody who's doing their laundry. And that lady with the big jar of water, you can say, well, that lady, just looking at the picture, you'll say she is not going to use up water for laundry, taking a bath, or cleaning dishes. None of that. She's going to use up water for drinking and cooking. Then you talk about whatever is in that water. Because of that animal or the humans, who knows? Earlier this year, there was this festival in Hinduism called Kumbh Mela. I'm sure American media has covered that. This is the largest human gathering in India. It's the largest human gathering in the world. This year, it was 400 million people who came to the river Ganges and ceremonially dipped themselves, cleaned themselves for a whole period of time. And also, to give you a little fun fact, is that's the only time, Kumbh Mela is the only gathering and the only time human population can be seen from space. That's 400 million people at one place. Well, what they were doing, the government did not do any kind of measures, and even the Hindu priest said, look, when people go in there, they do all kinds of things. What's troubling is, the Ganges is believed to be one of the sacred rivers in Hinduism. They drink that water right there while they were doing all whatever stuff. So anyway, you talk about all kinds of bacteria, virus, whatnot. The official numbers, not that Ganges issue, but there was 300,000 children die from diarrhea in India every year. Again, that is just water-related issues. So what we do is we don't just drill wells. We drill wells, but also put reverse osmosis filtration plants on them. So this is a typical water filtration plant. 6,000 liters per hour. That's 1,500 gallons an hour. So that 1,500 gallons, you're talking about. These are heavy machinery, and we have about. That's my dad and my brothers and one of the Bible teachers there with another one. So these machinery, we have 12 so far. They're all located in 12 different locations. Every one of them is on church property where people come to the church buildings to get water. And our Christian brothers and sisters will have an opportunity to interact with them. And for the community to know who is doing that good work. So these 12 locations are catering to at least 150,000 individuals with clean water. But again, our ultimate goal is not just clean water. Our ultimate goal is to provide them with living water. And it has proved to be pretty substantially impactful in those communities. I mean, there are communities, they will protect the church building. They'll protect these facilities because they know what level of difference Christians are making. Even though, and I'll tell you one thing, when you talk about persecution, 4 or 5 years ago, there was one individual who basically was verbally targeting my dad for being a Christian, for quote unquote converting, because we don't even use the word conversion, converting Hindus to Christianity. I mean, we were like, okay, what do we do? Do we say something? Do we act on it? Well, before we did anything, local Hindus were the ones who shut him down. Local Hindus who stood up for us. And that just told us, okay, well, there are sympathizers in this bunch. They're not fully out of it. They're not fully, but they love this work enough to say, okay, we're not letting somebody come and run it down. We're not letting anybody just destroy this thing. We're protecting this. So there are individuals who are not yet our brothers and sisters. They are in that process. And I say one thing, Hindus actually go through 4 different phases of this whole process of from point A to point B. One, they'll say, Jesus is one of the many millions of gods. And then second, they'll say, Jesus is one of the many millions, but he's one of the powerful ones. They'll come to recognize that he's powerful. But then the third they'll say, he is powerful, but I want to make him my personal God. All along saying, until third phase, they're acknowledging the deity of everybody else, and Jesus is one of the many, but he's one of the powerful, and he happens to be powerful, and I happen to like him. And I want to devote my time to him. But then the fourth phase is where they will come all out and say, okay, this is it. None of them are gods and goddesses. So that phase of journey, we don't know where people are, but we knew these Hindus are watching our TV program, and the Hindus are not only watching our TV program, but they're watching our lives. That is substantially impactful. But again, not only in India, but also here in Hampton or in Calhoun County, in the United States, people are watching us and how we go about doing things. But anyway, so talking about the persecution, India is at the top again and again every year. This is 2023. The level of violence against Christians. Mostly, again, I don't want to paint the whole of country and generalize India as being, Christian haters. Well, mostly it happens in the north. It's kind of coming down to the south as well, but north is known for persecution. On a scale of 0 to 16.7, India it was at 15.7. Ahead of China, 11.1. Ahead of North Korea. So there is a lot going on in the last 11 years, and we're hoping that, at least from an American perspective, and we're hoping that America would even say something. American government doesn't even have to say anything, but at least acknowledge that there is something happening for Christians in that part of the world, because there's not really any voice in political arena like in the Indian Senate. We don't call it Senate, but Parliament. We don't really have any Christian voice there. There's nobody who can say, hey, something's bad is happening for Christians in this country. There's nobody to speak up. But some folks who are here are in the position to make those kind of statements and let the Indian government backtrack and think about carefully what they're doing. But with this persecution, but again, these numbers. When you say, when you say 15.7 on the scale of 0 to 16.7, those are statistics. Somebody out there. But when you talk about individuals, you're sitting next to each other and participating in the Lord's Supper and having a meal together, and the next thing you know, you get a phone call that somebody is being killed. Or somebody lost their job or livelihood because of their faith. A month and a half ago, actually 2 months now, 24th, a friend of ours, one who used to work with our TV channel, his body was found on the roadside. Government declared it was an accident. Nobody in their right mind would say it was an accident. I mean, it's just common sense. If you were in a motorcycle accident, a motorcycle would not end up on your body. I mean, it's just simple. But that's how it ended up. And they said, well, it's just shocking how, and it's just ridiculous how the chief of the state's police department said, well, the motorcycle flew up in the air and landed on it. This is exactly what it said. Well, I mean, as it stands, it was an accident. But we know better than what they're saying, because just what we see is making a difference of what actually happened. But again, that's the extreme level of persecution where people lose their lives. But then you have individuals who lose, like that lady lost her leg. Her husband is the one actually cut her leg off. So when those things happen, we try to help these individuals, by providing this set of water buffaloes or other issues. This lady, you're trying to help her and her 3 children. So again, losing a leg might pale out when you know an individual who lost his life. But again, those are the situations that Christians are going through in India at this time. We do a lot of relief efforts. In the community as well, we give away tricycles for people who have waist-down disabilities. They cannot walk, but they can use their hands to pedal and steer these little vehicles. So they get those in the community, and so that they can have some level of independence. We do food relief, again, do flood relief. Some of them are more seasonal. We pray that this won't happen every year. Last year flood was a 500-year record flood, which was a terrible situation. We opened up our building for the people in the community for a couple of weeks, where they used the church building for housing. We have an oxygen generator plant. We use this. We have started this during COVID, but we still use that and fill the oxygen tanks and give away to the people who are in oxygen need, ICUs and other situations in the homes. Again, these are all some of the things that are open doors in a different level. We also, another aspect of our work is training program. Training, there are 2 different aspects to the training. One is in India, another one goes outside of India. So outside of India, when I travel, I not only try to raise funds and talk about the work in India, but I also do workshops to train our brothers and sisters in equipping them with tools and resources necessary to engage in a dialogue, a spiritual level dialogue with Hindus and Muslims in this country. As I said, and I think I was telling you earlier, Dallas-Fort Worth has 300,000 people from India in their midst, and there's not really anybody. 323 congregations that were surveyed. There's not really any Indian or Hindu background. I said no Hindu background Christian in those congregations, but there's one couple at where Dr. Tom Ward worships, who are from India, but they are already Christian, but they moved to the Dallas area. But the training program that goes in India is a 3-year Bible college program, and it's again, we started that. This is the 3rd graduating class so far. We have 283 graduates. This was the most recent graduating class. We had 124 individuals, and top 10 men got those motorcycles. They're not really motorcycles, there's more 120cc mopeds that'll help them go to interior villages, remote villages without any kind of public transportation, so that they can preach the word. Some of y'all might remember this man, Brother David Shannon from Freed-Hardeman University. He came to the graduation. He was a keynote speaker addressing the crowd. So one of the most exciting ones for us is not only the preacher training program, but the tech college that go together with it. So right now we have fully operational. We have 6 different trades: IT lab, electricians, a welding, fitter workshop, HVAC, and sewing technology. So we are also in the process of expanding this substantially. We're willing to where we are hoping to have at least 1,000 or more possible individuals that could come and be a part of this program. So what this is doing is, our whole process is 3-step. Number one, we train them in the Bible, we train them in one of the trades, and send them out and help them find jobs where they can be self-supporting evangelists around the world. So that is, again, one of the major differences that is happening. A group is headed to Arabian Peninsula. Right now, that's where things are happening with the 9 different countries. Some of our graduates are headed there. But again, in all of that to say, I want to mention briefly what level of difference Christianity has done for India. I'm talking about just the country of India. Some of these things I'm about to read out, I haven't memorized all of this yet, but this is something I just put together yesterday. Some of them are shocking. I talked about the burning of widows. Even though the practice still takes place, it is actively banned by Christian influence. Christian workers and Christian missionaries who are behind this thing said, burning widows is not right. A lie. You're talking about, dead widows, that's a whole different deal, but you're talking about a lie. And there was a law that came into place because of Christian influence. There's a thing called breast tax. Oh, I'm thinking, what in the world? Charles Meade is the man behind putting a ban on this. He said, this is just ridiculous how this is happening. So what's happening was in the kingdom of Travancore, 150 years ago, probably 100 years ago, where the lower class women were not allowed to cover their upper bodies. This is a rule. And women are taxed. If they cover their upper bodies, they're taxed. And there was a woman who said, I'm tired of it. And she cut off her breast and said, I'm not paying any tax anymore. This is a real story. You can look it up online and say breast tax in India, and you'll hear all kinds of horror stories. Christianity and Christians were behind this thing where a ban was put on this. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine a right to education in 1913? A law has to pass for right to education for individuals who are not of the higher strata. Right to health. I mean, you talk about all the, Christians built the first hospital in India, first university in India, first educational program in India. Everything that was brought because of Christian activity. There was also something called eradication of a criminal tribal act. The higher class religious groups said, all these tribal people are scary looking and we're scared of them, so just brand them criminal. So every time you see these tribals in society, they should be living in woods, they shouldn't be coming out. Every time you see them out, arrest them and put them in jail. Without any wrongdoing. That has been in place for years and years and years. And Christians were the ones behind that to eradication, right? Abolition of slavery. You talk about the Jogini or the Devadasi or the temple prostitution. Christians were behind that. English education, Alexander Duff was the one who brought it in and said, let's teach our kids some English. And the right to property, 1795, Christians were behind that. Abolition of killing children, 1833. No need, this is even worse. Brahmins are the priests. They are the priestly class in India. They believe that God created Brahmins from the head, warriors from the chest and the shoulders area, and the merchants and the business people from the thighs, and everybody else from the feet. Well, interesting kind of God and biased, and you would know who wrote that book. So, and those documents will say if any time the fourth caste people gets married, listen to this, is just awful. I may even have to say this thing, but this is the truth and reality of life of people in India hundreds of years ago. In 1819, Christians were behind bringing an act and say, when the fourth caste people are married, there was no reason to send your wife to a Brahmin man for 7 nights. That was a law before 1819. In 1819, they said, no more. And Christians were behind that. Christians are behind in 1830 for abolition of human sacrifice. I mean, some of these are like, do we even have to make laws for these? Right to sit. For the fourth caste people, you always have to stand up in front of these higher caste people. You never sit down. You could get killed. Abolition of childhood marriages, 1891. And the lady I was talking about, it was the daughter of temple prostitute, is Muthulakshmi. In 1930, she brought a even more greater act. Again, I can go on and on and on the level of difference Christianity had made in my country. And can you imagine if none of these laws were made, what kind of country I would be living in? And especially for those who are coming out of all these oppressed situations and trying to be a disciple of Jesus. It is a horrible, horrible situation. But the Lord has made a difference through His people. And when we say, may your kingdom come as it is in heaven, and so it be on earth. I mean, what kind of kingdom of God are we talking about on earth? We talk about, the kingdom being church, but what kind of community Christians are impacting? Because every single law that was made to make a difference in the lives of these oppressed people, Christians were behind that. And here we are, sitting here in Calhoun County, Hampton. What can we make a difference for our community here? Because when we look at one of the things that we're trying to do is what we call the cultural apologetics. What that means is we need to tell people what kind of difference Christianity has made for this world. And even in America, without even the staunch atheists are living under Christian influence. The laws that were made are Christian because every constitution of the world has a Christian background to it. Whether we acknowledge it or not, there are overtones of that. How in the world did abortion become illegal, homosexuality became illegal in Indian constitution? You see what I'm saying? Indian constitution and the Indian legal system penalizes all of this stuff. Whatever it is, there is, whether we acknowledge it or not, Christianity has a massive, massive impact in the world that we are living. To the point, like in before Christ or AD, well, some people are getting a little too tricky and say, well, we're not using BC anymore, we're using BCE. Well, it's still the same. Well, if you're saying before Common Era, what is the Common Era here? You're still going back to Jesus anyway. Right? And because without Jesus, there's no Common Era. But what I'm saying is, again, Christianity has done so much for this world to make this world a better place. But Christianity is not something nebulous that is floating out there. It is you and I. The people like us who have gone before us made all these differences in this world. That realize that this is what the Lord wants for this world. To make this world a better place. But we have a similar responsibility because we have to stand on the shoulders of these giants who have gone before us. We have to walk in their footsteps too. Because there's so much that needs to be done in this world, in this country, in our personal lives and the lives of the people. So when it boils down to one thing, what can we do? I mean, what can we do? Not just in India, not just, we don't want to see generalized statements and say, what can we do in this world? Well, that's pretty big. But what can we do in our small sphere of influence? I use the word influence because every single individual has an influence, whether for good or bad. Everyone has it. Even a little kid has it. But within our own sphere of influence, I'll give a few things that a wise man said, maybe about 100, maybe 80 years ago. That how do we naturalize this Christian ideology? And he said, well, here is something that y'all need to consider. Well, number one, he said, be more like Christ. Well, this is actually told, the man asked, it was a missionary. The man who responded was Gandhi. And he said, well, be more like Christ. Well, y'all might have heard this statement saying, I like your Christ, but not so much your Christians. Well, there was a background to that. This Mahatma Gandhi had gone through some severe issues with those who claimed to be Christian. In South Africa, back then, y'all could imagine what was going on, depending on people's skin color. So this man, Gandhi, was a dark-colored man. So when he was invited by his friends to come to worship, well, he said he came, only to be kicked out. He was never allowed to enter the building. So he went back and he became pretty much an opposite thing. But he never stopped studying Bible and promoting the Sermon on the Mount. If you ask anybody in India or any Hindu people that you come in contact with, who said the statement, turn the other cheek? And you and I say, that's Jesus on the Sermon on the Mount. Well, no, not so in India or with the Hindus. They would say that's Gandhi. Why? Because he promoted that more than some of us Christians in that culture. But he said, be more like Christ. But also then he said, when you talk about the teachings of the Bible, don't water down. You can water down the teachings and the truth, fill the buildings, but you will never fill the heaven. But then he said, love is so central to Christianity. Emphasize love. And he said, you know what? It is one thing to quote John 3:16 and say, God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son and all that stuff. But it's a whole different thing and say, God, I individually allow me to be that instrument of your love to love this world. Because God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, but that Son has gone back. What do we do now? To replicate and to put that John 3:16 into practice. We as individual Christians will have to act as the instruments of that love of God within our own families, within congregations and communities, and this world. But then he also said, for those who are hungry, God only shows up in the form of bread. Well, a lot of times when we do benevolence, people are like, well, why are you all doing this? You shouldn't be doing benevolence. And there are congregations of our own brethren who said, don't do that. We shouldn't be taking any money from the church treasury and doing some benevolent works. They go to those extremes too. But the truth of the matter is, as James said, when somebody's hungry, you can't say just be full and warm and go away. You just can't say that. It just defeats the whole Christian purpose. And that's the whole point of it. For those who are hungry, God shows up in the form of bread. And we need to be that instruments who will take that bread to those who are in need. And finally, he said, when you encounter these other people with other faiths, approach them with a sympathetic approach. Be sympathetic to them. Don't try to be Bible-ashy Christians. We have been known for that for some time, and it hadn't gone well. But understanding, when I talk about Hindus who devote their lives for certain aspect of it, they're not insincere. They are very sincere. They might be sincerely wrong, but nevertheless, they're very, very sincere. What does it take for a person to make a vow and say, God, I'm going to, if you help me with a job, if you help me pass this exam, or if you help me with good health, or get over this disease, or sickness, whatever, they will say, I will come and see you wherever you are on the mountaintop. There was one mountain, the mountaintop temple, where there's a god and the god's idol, I guess. But to go to the mountaintop, it was about 3,500 steps. 3,500 steps, crude, rock-cut steps. They will say, I'll come see you and pay my vows and clear those vows at the mountaintop. And they will say, they'll go, some of them will say, go a step further and say, I'll come on my knees. When they say, I come on my knees, they'll walk on the knees. They'll go one step at a time on their knees, climbing the 3,500 rock-cut steps. Maybe 20, 30 steps in, they're already bleeding. They want to make that. They want to finish it. And then come next year, they might have another vow and say, I'll do it again. I mean, those are the kind of people we might be dealing with even here in this community. And just to understand, hey, these are not people who are intentionally putting out wrong stuff. They probably believe that wrong stuff sincerely. But our job is to have a little more patience and just understanding them from their perspective. That goes a long way. And Paul was talking about this thing in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, in verses 19 through 23. He said, even though I am free from all people, I made myself a slave so that I can win more. Even though I'm free, he said, I made myself a slave. Your Bibles probably say, I made myself a bondservant or a servant. That's a word, doulos. And English translations are trying to be too politically correct in that and saying, well, that's the word slave. Can you imagine? They said, I don't have any obligation, but I want to be a slave to somebody so that I can save them. That's strong terminology there. But he says, even though that is the case, he said, to the Jew, I became a Jew. And he kind of explains how it looks to be a slave to somebody so that you can win them. To the Jew, I became a Jew so that I might win them. Or to those who are under the law, I became as one under the law. To those who are outside of the law, I became as one outside of the law, as though not without the law itself. And he says, I became all things to all people so that I might by any chance and every possibility I can win some of them. But here's the last statement in verse 23. I do all things for the sake of the gospel. I do all things for the sake of the gospel. Again, we need to ask this question. I understand, this just breaks my heart because when I see American Christianity or Western Christianity, I'm not concerned really about the Western Christianity because American Christianity is what made a difference in my life, in the life of my country. Personally, at a large scale too. But when I see congregations closing every week, one congregation is closing in America every single week, permanently. It just breaks my heart because these are the congregations and the Christians who sent out missionaries all over the world to preach the word. Today, this is the sad reality. But what I'm saying is, the reason for that probably is, apathy, indifference. Even those who profess to be Christian, they're saying, well, it's time to move on. But God is saying, Paul is saying, I do all things for the sake of the gospel. I want us to ask that same question. Am I doing all things for the sake of the gospel? I mean, all things. I believe if we can factor that in everything that we do, I believe there is going to be a massive difference that we can make. We can still make in this world, in our lives, in our families, businesses that we work, or the colleges, and wherever we are, I believe we can make a massive difference. But here's the thing. The second part of that verse says, I do all things for the sake of the gospel. The second part here is the kicker. He says, so that I might be a partaker of its blessings. I do all things for the sake of the gospel so that I might be a partaker of its blessings. What Paul is basically saying is, everybody wants to have a partaker of those blessings, gospel's blessings. Everybody desire that. Everybody wants it. But Paul is saying it is only to those who do all things for the sake of the gospel. This morning I want us to consider that thing. I want us to consider here in Hampton and Calhoun County what kind of difference as God's ambassadors that we could do for this influence, the sphere of influence that we have here. Because if we think about this one particular statement, if we do all things for the sake of the gospel, I believe there is going to be a massive difference that we can create and stir up. Because if we don't do all things for the sake of the gospel, the automatic result of that particular statement in verse 23 is we're not going to be partakers of the blessings of the gospel provides. This morning, if you're a Christian, I want us to think that, I want to challenge y'all and see what you could do in rededicating our lives and reassessing our lives and priorities, and say, maybe my life's priority is not the gospel to top with. Maybe it is time to say, okay, I'm going to make some changes and say, I want gospel to be the top priority of my life, and that'll change. It'll start with me, and it'll just permeate. It is like 11. We try to use 11 in a bad way, but in 11 we can use the same terminology for the good. I want us to think about that and see, make those changes to see what we can do in this community. If you're not a Christian this morning, I can assure you, if you're here on a Sunday morning, that tells a lot, because you're not somewhere else fishing or hunting or doing something else on a Sunday morning, but you are here. If you're not a Christian, I can guarantee you that you are desiring those blessings of the gospel. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. I thank you for that. Thank you for coming for that. But also, if you're just stopping there, you won't be a partaker of those blessings. Ephesians chapter 1 and verse 3 talks about all the spiritual blessings are in Christ Jesus. There's none outside. If that is the case, you need to be in Christ this morning to be a partaker of those blessings, and dedicate your life to the Messiah so that you can be a partaker of this blessing. Whether you're a Christian this morning or you're not, I want us to think about those blessings that are available in Christ Jesus as we stand and sing.